The sun was setting behind the jagged peaks of the Rocky Mountains, casting long shadows over the vast expanse of Yellowstone National Park. The golden light flickered against the rugged terrain, illuminating the entrance to a cave that had been whispered about in hushed tones among cryptid hunters and thrill seekers for years. It was known simply as the Hollow, a place steeped in mystery and terror where the wind carried the ghostly cries of those who had ventured too deep into its bowels. My name is Derek Caldwell, and I'm a cryptid hunter. I've dedicated my life to uncovering the truth behind legends and myths that slither through the underbrush of our world. This time, however, the adventure promised to be darker than any I had faced before. The phone call had come on a rain-soaked evening in late September. An anonymous tip had led me to this place, this cave where not one but 36 bodies had been discovered, each one a mystery, each one a chilling reminder of the unknown. I stood at the mouth of the cave, a gaping maw in the earth, as shadows danced in the twilight. My breath clouded in the crisp air, mingling with the earthy smell of damp stone and decaying leaves. The forest around me was alive with the sounds of rustling branches and distant animal calls, but an eerie silence enveloped the cave, as if it were a predator waiting to pounce. My heart raced as I thought about the rumors I had heard, the tales of strange creatures that lurked in the shadows, of people who had vanished without a trace. I wasn't alone in my venture. I had gathered a small team of fellow hunters and researchers, each with their reasons for seeking the truth. There was Mia, a brilliant anthropologist with a penchant for the macabre, and Tom, a seasoned survivalist with a fascination for the supernatural. As we gathered our equipment and prepared to descend into the cave, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and an inexplicable chill coursed through me. Was it merely the anticipation of what lay ahead, or was there something more sinister at play? "Are we ready?" Mia asked, her voice steady but laced with excitement. She adjusted her headlamp, the beam cutting through the encroaching darkness. "Let's do this," I replied, forcing confidence into my voice. We had come too far to turn back now. With our gear secured, we stepped into the cave, the entrance swallowing us whole. The air inside was damp and cold, the walls slick with moisture that glistened in our headlamp's glow. Each step echoed ominously, the sound reverberating through the narrow passages like a whispered warning. The deeper we ventured, the darker it became, and soon we were engulfed in a silence so profound it felt suffocating. As we descended further, the walls narrowed, and the ground became uneven, rocky outcrops jutting out like jagged teeth. I led the way, my heart pounding in my chest, every instinct screaming that we were not alone. The cave twisted and turned, revealing strange formations that looked almost like figures frozen in time, figures that seemed to watch us with empty eyes. "Derek, over here," Tom called from behind. I turned to see him crouched beside what looked like an altar made of stone, its surface etched with ancient symbols that sent a shiver down my spine. "These markings, they're not natural." Mia joined us, her brow furrowed in concentration. "They resemble some of the petroglyphs found in other regions, but they're more intricate. This cave could have been a site for rituals." "Rituals?" I echoed, the word hanging in the air like a noose. "What kind of rituals?" "Possibly sacrificial," Mia replied, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. "If these bodies were found here, it could mean they were part of something far darker than we imagined." The thought made my stomach churn, but I steeled myself. "We need to keep moving. There's a reason we're here." With a determined nod, we pressed on, navigating the narrow passages that twisted deeper into the earth. The temperature dropped noticeably, the air growing heavy with an unsettling presence. Shadows seemed to flicker at the edge of our vision, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just beyond the reach of our lights. As we turned a corner, the passage opened into a large cavern. The ceiling soared above us, dripping with stalactites like fangs ready to descend. In the center of the cavern, we found something that made my blood run cold. The remnants of campfires surrounded by scattered belongings, backpacks, clothing, and equipment long abandoned. "Looks like we're not the first to explore this place," Tom said, kneeling to examine a torn backpack. "These belong to someone, or several someones." Mia picked up a frayed piece of fabric, her eyes widening as she recognized the logo of a missing persons group. These people were searching for something too. Suddenly, a distant sound echoed through the cave, a low, guttural growl that sent chills racing down my spine. I froze, exchanging terrified glances with my team. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my heart hammering in my chest. "Yeah," Tom said, his voice barely above a breath. "We should." Before he could finish, a flash of movement caught my eye. Something slithered just beyond the shadows, its form indistinct and shifting like smoke. The growl grew louder, reverberating through the cavern, echoing the dread that wrapped around us like a shroud. Panic set in as we scrambled to our feet, the sense of danger pressing in on all sides. The growl morphed into a series of low, bone-chilling roars, and I knew we had to get out of the open space. "We need to find a way out," I shouted, my voice cutting through the chaos. "Over there," Mia pointed toward a narrow passageway to our left. "We can hide in there." Without hesitation, we dashed toward the opening, our heartbeats pounding in unison with the thunderous growls that echoed behind us. The narrow passage was cramped, forcing us to move in single file, our lights flickering wildly as we pressed deeper into the darkness. "Do you think it saw us?" Tom panted, glancing back nervously. "I don't know," I replied, trying to sound braver than I felt. "But we can't stay here." As we reached the end of the narrow corridor, we found ourselves in another chamber, this one filled with a thick mist that swirled around our legs like ghostly tendrils. The air was heavy and oppressive, making it hard to breathe. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me, as if the very essence of the cave was alive and aware of our presence. "Do you think it's gone?" Mia asked, her voice trembling as she scanned the shadows. "I don't think so," I said, taking a deep breath to steady my nerves. "We need to stay quiet and listen." The growling had faded into an unsettling silence, but something else was there, a soft scratching sound, like claws scraping against stone. It came from somewhere within the mist, a sound that sent adrenaline coursing through my veins. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the fog, its shape shifting and contorting, the mist wrapping around it like a shroud. It was taller than any human, its limbs elongated and gangly, moving with an unnatural grace. The creature's eyes glowed in the darkness, a predatory gleam that sent a jolt of terror through me. "It's not human," I hissed, stumbling back. "Run," Mia screamed, her eyes wide with horror. We bolted back the way we had come, our feet pounding against the stone floor as we fled the creature that had suddenly become our worst nightmare. The growl erupted again, echoing off the walls like thunder, and I could hear the rapid thud of its movements closing in behind us. "Which way?" Tom shouted as we reached a fork in the passage. "Left. Go left," I yelled, my instincts guiding me. I had no idea where we were going, but anywhere was better than facing whatever was pursuing us. The darkness closed in around us as we raced through the twisting passages, the growling growing fainter yet still haunting. My heart pounded in my chest, and fear clawed at my throat as I glanced back. The creature was no longer in sight, but I felt it lurking in the shadows, watching, waiting. As we turned another corner, we stumbled into a smaller cavern, its walls adorned with strange carvings that looked like depictions of ancient rituals, the figures frozen in a grotesque dance. The atmosphere was thick with a sense of dread, and for a moment, we simply stood there, gasping for breath, the weight of our situation settling heavily on our shoulders. "We can't stay here," Mia said, her voice a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would summon the creature back. "We need to keep moving." "Agreed," I said, my eyes scanning the chamber for any sign of an exit. "But we can't just run blindly. We need a plan." Tom stepped forward, pointing to a narrow opening in the wall that looked like it led to another passage. "What about that? It might take us deeper, but it could lead us away from whatever that thing is." "Let's do it," I replied, steeling myself for what lay ahead. The cave was a labyrinth, and we had already lost track of where we were, but if we stayed here, we'd surely become prey. As we moved toward the opening, a faint glimmer caught my eye. I approached it, my heart racing with a mix of dread and curiosity. It was a small, metallic object partially buried in the ground, covered in dirt and grime. I knelt down and brushed away the debris, revealing a rusted knife, its blade stained and worn. It was a sign, perhaps a warning of the horrors that had unfolded in this cave long before we arrived. Derek, Tom's voice broke through my thoughts. We need to go now. With the knife clutched in my hand, I hurried after my friends, slipping through the narrow passage and into the unknown. The air grew colder, and the scratching sounds returned, echoing through the tunnels, closer now. The passage opened up into a wider cavern, dimly lit by the bioluminescent fungi that clung to the walls like ghostly lanterns. The light cast eerie shadows that danced across the stone, creating an otherworldly atmosphere. The beauty of it was starkly juxtaposed with the terror we felt, as we remained acutely aware of the creature lurking just out of sight. "Look at this," Mia whispered, her voice reverent. She knelt beside a pile of bones scattered on the ground, remnants of what seemed to be small animals, their skulls cracked and hollow. "This is fresh. Whatever that thing is, it's feeding." I swallowed hard, the weight of dread settling heavier on my shoulders. "We have to keep moving. We can't stay here." As we pressed on, we found ourselves in a labyrinth of interconnected chambers, each one more unsettling than the last. The air thickened with an oppressive presence, and every sound, every rustle of the wind or drip of water seemed amplified, heightening our fear. "Where do you think the bodies were found?" Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Probably deeper," I replied, glancing at the walls lined with those strange carvings. "This place feels like a burial ground." Suddenly, the ground shook beneath us, a low rumble that echoed through the cavern. We exchanged panicked glances, the fear palpable in the air. "What was that?" Mia asked, her eyes wide. "I don't know," I said, gripping the knife tightly, "but we need to move." As we turned to leave, a low growl reverberated through the air, chilling us to the bone. The creature was back, and it was closer than ever. We dashed through the twisting tunnels, the sound of our footsteps echoing as we fled. The growling intensified, becoming a terrifying roar that reverberated through the stone walls. "We have to find a way out," Tom shouted, his breath coming in quick gasps. I could barely think as panic surged through me. We turned another corner and stumbled into a larger chamber, the walls adorned with more intricate carvings. In the center, we found a large stone altar, its surface stained dark with something unidentifiable. It was a gruesome sight, a remnant of whatever dark rituals had once taken place here. "What is this place?" Mia breathed, her voice trembling. "Maybe it's where they performed the sacrifices," I suggested, dread coiling in my stomach. "We have to go." We darted around the altar, searching for a way out as the growling continued to echo ominously. It was then that I noticed something glimmering in the dim light, something metallic, half buried in the dirt. I knelt down, brushing away the earth to reveal a series of bones strung together like a necklace, adorned with crude carvings that seemed to depict the creature we feared. "This is wrong," Mia said, her voice shaking. "We shouldn't be here." "Tell me about it," I muttered, but we had no choice. We were too deep into this nightmare to turn back now. As we searched the chamber for an exit, a chilling realization hit me. The carvings on the bones were not just symbols, they were a language, a warning, perhaps. Each mark told a story of pain and suffering, a history of those who had come before us. "We need to figure out what this means," I said, glancing at Mia. "Maybe it can help us understand what we're up against." Mia nodded, her mind racing as she examined the carvings. If these bones were part of some ritual, they could be tied to the creature itself. It might be bound to this place in some way. "Bound?" Tom echoed. "How?" "Think about it," Mia continued, her excitement growing despite the terror surrounding us. "What if the creature is a guardian of this cave, tied to the sacrifices made here? Maybe it only comes after those who disturb its domain." The growling grew louder, echoing through the chamber as if it understood our words, a sound filled with rage. My heart raced as I scanned the shadows, my grip tightening around the knife. "Whatever it is, it's close," I said, my voice tense. "We can't stay here." We turned to leave, but as we did, a flash of movement caught my eye. The creature emerged from the shadows, its form more terrifying than I could have imagined. It stood on two legs, its body covered in dark, matted fur, eyes glowing with an unnatural light that pierced through the darkness. "Run," I shouted, adrenaline surging through me as we bolted from the chamber, the growl erupting into a deafening roar that shook the very ground beneath us. We raced through the labyrinth of tunnels, the growls echoing around us, creating a cacophony of terror. My lungs burned as I pushed myself to run faster, dodging the outcroppings and rock formations that seemed to reach out to ensnare us. "Where do we go?" Mia shouted, panic lacing her voice. "Just keep going," I yelled back, fear propelling me forward. The tunnels twisted and turned, each corner leading us deeper into darkness. I could feel the creature behind us, its presence a suffocating weight that filled the air with dread. I could hear its claws scraping against the stone, its breath hot and heavy on my neck. Suddenly, the ground beneath us began to tremble again, this time more violently. A loud crack echoed through the cave and I stumbled, nearly losing my footing. "Watch out," Tom shouted, reaching for me just as a section of the ceiling collapsed behind us. Rubble and dust filled the air, and I felt a rush of panic. "This way," I yelled, spotting a narrow passageway to our right. We darted into the opening, squeezing through just as the rocks fell behind us, sealing off our pursuer. We pushed deeper into the tunnel, the air growing colder and more oppressive. "Are we safe?" Mia asked breathlessly, glancing back to ensure the creature hadn't followed. "I don't know," I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. "But we have to keep moving." As we ventured further into the darkness, the tunnel opened up into yet another cavern, but this one was different. The walls glistened with an otherworldly sheen, shimmering as if the rock itself were alive. Strange bioluminescent fungi dotted the walls, casting eerie shadows that danced in the flickering light. "What is this place?" Tom whispered, awestruck. "It feels sacred," Mia said, her voice tinged with reverence. But there was no time for wonder. The growling had returned, louder and more ferocious, echoing from the entrance we had just passed through. The creature was relentless, and our time was running out. We needed a plan, and we needed it fast. "Listen," I said, urgency lacing my voice as we caught our breath. "If the creature is bound to this cave, maybe there's a way to stop it. We have to confront it, or we'll never escape." "Confront it," Tom repeated incredulously. "Are you out of your mind?" "It's our only chance," I insisted, trying to instill a sense of determination in my voice. "If it's guarding something, maybe we can use that against it. We just need to find a way to break its hold on this place." Mia's eyes darted around the cavern, taking in the strange markings that adorned the walls. "There must be something here, something that can help us." As we searched the cavern, I noticed a series of symbols carved into the stone floor, leading toward a large stone structure that resembled a shrine. The carvings told a story, a tale of sacrifice and binding. "It's a ritual," I said, excitement mingling with fear. "If we can recreate it, maybe we can turn the tables on the creature." "But what if it goes wrong?" Mia cautioned, her brow furrowed. "Then we're dead," I replied bluntly, "but it's our only shot." We gathered around the shrine, the strange carvings illuminating our faces as we deciphered the symbols. The growling continued to echo in the distance, drawing closer, a constant reminder that time was running out. We gathered whatever items we could find. Pieces of bone, the rusted knife I had discovered earlier, and remnants of clothing that littered the ground. With each item placed on the shrine, the air grew thicker and the temperature dropped further. "Now what?" Tom asked, glancing nervously at the entrance. "We need to chant the words," I said, recalling the symbols that lined the walls. "It's the only way to bind the creature back to this place." We formed a circle around the shrine, and as I began to chant the words, I felt the energy shift in the air. The growling outside turned into a cacophony of enraged roars, and I knew we had attracted its attention. Mia and Tom joined in, their voices trembling but steady. As we chanted, the shrine began to glow, the symbols on the floor lighting up in response. The creature's growls turned to shrieks of fury, and the ground trembled beneath our feet. "Keep going," I urged, my heart racing as I felt the cave vibrating around us. Just then, the creature burst into the cavern, its eyes blazing with fury. It lunged toward us, but the glowing symbols flared brighter, pushing it back. "Don't stop," I shouted, the power of our words seeming to resonate with the very stone around us. The creature writhed in the light, its form distorting as it clawed at the air, desperate to break free from the binding energy we had created. The growling transformed into a pained howl, echoing through the cavern as if the very essence of its being was being pulled apart. "Derek," Mia cried, her voice strained. "It's fighting back." "Focus," I shouted back, forcing the words from my lips as the energy surged through us. "We can do this." As we continued to chant, the light intensified, illuminating the cavern with a brilliant glow. The symbols on the floor pulsed, and the creature shrieked, its form collapsing in on itself as if being drawn back into the shadows from which it had come. With one final surge of energy, I felt the ground shake violently beneath us, and I braced myself against the shrine. The cavern echoed with a deafening roar as the creature disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind an unnatural silence. We stood there, panting and trembling, the glow slowly fading as the cave returned to its eerie stillness. I could hardly believe what had just happened. "We did it," Tom gasped, staring wide-eyed at the empty space where the creature had stood. But there was no time to celebrate. As the glow faded, I noticed something shifting in the shadows, a dark presence lingering, perhaps waiting for the moment to strike again. "We need to get out of here," I urged, adrenaline surging once more. "Agreed," Mia said, looking toward the entrance. "This cave is too dangerous. We need to find a way out now." We hurried toward the exit, retracing our steps through the winding tunnels. The cave felt different now, as if the oppressive weight of the creature's presence had lifted, but an unsettling silence filled the air, a silence that felt heavy with unspoken truths. As we navigated the passages, I could still feel the remnants of the creature's rage lurking in the shadows. "What if it's not over?" I murmured, my heart racing. "It has to be," Mia replied, her voice steady. "We faced it, and we bound it to this place." "Maybe," Tom said, glancing over his shoulder nervously, "but I have a bad feeling." The path twisted and turned, but eventually we found ourselves back in the chamber with the altar. I hesitated, remembering the remnants of the previous explorers, those who had come seeking the truth, only to vanish without a trace. "We can't linger," I urged, my instincts screaming at me. "We need to get out of here." As we approached the exit, the ground trembled beneath us once more, a low rumble echoing through the cavern. Fear surged through me, and I knew the creature was not gone. It was merely waiting for the right moment to strike again. "Run," I shouted, breaking into a sprint as we raced toward the entrance, the growl returning, louder and more furious than before. The passage felt endless, the walls closing in around us as we pushed forward, desperate to escape. The growling intensified, and I could feel the creature's breath on my neck, hot and foul. With one final burst of energy, we burst through the entrance of the cave, emerging into the cool night air. The stars twinkled overhead, a stark contrast to the darkness we had just escaped. We stumbled into the open, gasping for breath as the cave loomed behind us, an ominous silhouette against the night sky. "Did we make it?" Mia panted, looking back at the cave entrance. "I think so," I said, my heart still racing. But even as I spoke, I felt a lingering unease. The creature was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next opportunity. As we caught our breath, the weight of what had happened settled over us like a shroud. We had faced something unimaginable, a creature born from the darkness of legends and had barely escaped with our lives. "We need to report this," Tom said, his voice shaky. "We have to warn others about the cave." "Agreed," I said, glancing back at the entrance, where darkness swallowed the light. "But how do we explain what we've seen? No one will believe us." Mia shook her head, her expression grave. "We have evidence, the knife, the bones, the carvings. We can document everything." As we gathered our equipment, I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't seen the last of the creature. The cave felt like a living entity, one that wouldn't easily relinquish its hold over the land or the souls it had claimed. Days turned into weeks as we compiled our findings, documenting every detail of our harrowing experience. I couldn't shake the haunting memories of the cave, the growls, the shadows, and the faces of those who had come before us, lost to the darkness. We presented our findings to a local cryptid research group, armed with photographs and notes that detailed the history of the cave and its dark legends. But skepticism met us at every turn. Most people dismissed our claims as fabrications, mere tales spun to draw attention to the cave. People have been exploring Yellowstone for decades, a seasoned researcher scoffed. If there were a creature lurking in the caves, someone would have found it by now. I clenched my fists, frustration boiling within me. We faced it. We know it's real. Despite our efforts, the doubt from the research community weighed heavily on my shoulders. It felt as if the cave had become a part of me, its darkness lingering in my thoughts, a constant reminder of what we had encountered. Determined to prove the truth, I returned to the cave with Mia and Tom. Armed with cameras and recording equipment, we aimed to document any evidence of the creature's existence. The air was thick with anticipation as we stood before the entrance, memories flooding back to the terrifying night we had fled. As we stepped into the cave once more, a chill ran down my spine. The air was heavy, almost electric, and I felt an unsettling sensation wash over me. The shadows shifted in the flickering light of our headlamps, and I couldn't help but feel that we were being watched. "Let's stick together," I said, my voice steady but filled with trepidation. "We need to document everything." We ventured deeper into the cavern, each step echoing ominously in the silence. The markings on the walls seemed to pulse with energy, drawing us in as we navigated the familiar passageways. It felt as though the cave itself was alive, a breathing entity that craved our presence. Suddenly, a low growl rumbled through the air, sending chills down my spine. We froze, hearts racing as the sound echoed off the walls. "It's here," Mia whispered, her eyes wide with terror. "We need to find a place to hide," I urged, scanning the shadows for a safe spot. We slipped into a narrow crevice just as the creature emerged from the darkness, its eyes glowing with fury. It prowled through the cavern, searching, the growls becoming more aggressive as it hunted for us. The cave pulsed with energy, and I could feel the weight of the creature's presence pressing down on us. We crouched in the shadows, barely breathing as we waited for it to pass. My heart raced as the growling intensified, echoing through the cavern like a death knell. "Derek, we can't stay here," Tom whispered, his voice trembling. "We need to get out." "I know," I replied, my mind racing, "but we can't risk being seen." The creature prowled closer, its breath hot and rancid. I could see its silhouette shifting in the dim light, muscles rippling beneath its dark fur. The air crackled with tension, and I felt the primal instinct to flee, but we had to face it. "On my count, we run for the shrine," I said, steeling myself. "If we can get there, maybe we can use the markings to bind it again." "Are you sure?" Mia asked, fear flickering in her eyes. "We have to try," I replied, determination surging through me. 1, 2, 3. We bolted from our hiding spot, racing toward the shrine as the creature turned, its eyes locking onto us with a predatory intensity. "Go," I shouted, adrenaline coursing through my veins. We reached the shrine just as the creature lunged, its claws slicing through the air. I could feel the ground tremble beneath us, the energy shifting as we gathered around the markings. "Start chanting," I yelled, my voice echoing in the cavern. We began to recite the words, the energy surrounding us intensifying as we focused on the symbols. The creature howled in rage, its form distorting as it was drawn toward the shrine. "Keep going," I urged, feeling the power of the cave surge around us. The markings glowed brighter, illuminating the chamber as the creature thrashed against the light. "Derek," Mia screamed, her voice filled with terror. "It's fighting back." "I can't hold it," I shouted, feeling the strain of the energy surging through me. With a final push, we channeled every ounce of our strength into the chant, the light exploding in a brilliant flash as the creature was engulfed. The roar echoed through the cave and the ground shook violently as the creature was pulled back into the shadows, its form collapsing in on itself. As the light faded, we stood panting, the cave falling silent once more. But I knew it wasn't over. The darkness would always be there, lurking just beyond the light. Emerging from the cave, we took a moment to catch our breath, the cool night air enveloping us. The stars twinkled overhead, a stark contrast to the darkness we had just faced. "We did it," Tom gasped, his eyes wide with disbelief. "But at what cost?" Mia replied, glancing back at the cave entrance, which loomed ominously against the night sky. I felt a pang of unease settle in my stomach. The cave had tested us, forced us to confront our fears, and while we had escaped for now, I knew the darkness would never truly be gone. "Let's go home," I said, my voice heavy with the weight of our experience. As we turned away from the cave, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows would always be a part of us. We had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, but we had also uncovered truths that would haunt us forever. The cave would remain a place of both beauty and terror, its secrets buried deep within the earth, waiting for the next unwary souls to stumble upon its dark embrace.